The moment Andrew Briggs stepped between the knife and the stranger, he had no idea he was about to change the course of American history. What started as a father's instinct to protect became something far more complicated when the woman he saved turned out to be Senator Elena Vasquez, 3 weeks away from announcing her presidential campaign. But heroes don't always get happy endings, and sometimes saving someone means losing everything you thought you wanted. This is a story about courage, sacrifice, and the unexpected ways our lives intersect with destiny. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The rain had been falling for 3 hours when Andrew Briggs finally gave up on his umbrella. It hung broken and useless from his wrist as he hurried down K Street, his daughter's art supplies clutched against his chest like a shield. The plastic bag was already soaked through, watercolors bleeding their promise of tomorrow's school project into a muddy rainbow. Lily was going to be devastated. He ducked under the narrow awning of a closed coffee shop, checking his phone. 8:47 p.m. She'd been asleep for an hour already, trusting him to make everything right for her presentation on Monday. "My dad can fix anything," she'd told her teacher last week, and Mrs. Rodriguez had smiled that knowing smile teachers give when they've heard it all before. If only she knew how many things he couldn't fix. Andrew pulled his jacket tighter and stepped back into the rain. The metro station was still 6 blocks away, and at this rate, he'd be lucky to catch the last train home to Silver Spring. Another perfect end to another perfect day in his perfectly imperfect life. The sound came from behind him, sharp, desperate. A woman's voice cutting through the white noise of rain on concrete. "Please, just take the bag, please." Andrew stopped. Turned. In the mouth of an alley between 2 government buildings, a figure in dark clothing had backed a woman against a brick wall. The knife in his hand caught the light from a street lamp, a small silver flash that made Andrew's chest tighten. "Keep walking," his brain said. "Call 911. Don't get involved. My dad can fix anything." Andrew set the art supplies down carefully against the building wall, as if he were just stepping away for a moment, as if he were coming right back. His hands were steady. That surprised him. "Hey." The word came out quieter than he'd intended. The man with the knife didn't turn around. "Hey!" Louder this time. Now the man turned. Young, maybe 25, with the kind of desperate energy that made Andrew's social worker instincts kick in. This wasn't a career criminal. This was someone who'd run out of options. "Walk away, man." The knife stayed pointed at the woman. "This isn't your business." Andrew could see her face now in the amber light. Mid-40s, professional, the kind of woman who wore expensive scarves and probably had a driver waiting somewhere. Her dark hair was plastered to her skull by the rain, and there was something in her eyes that looked like surprise, not just at the situation, but at Andrew himself, as if she hadn't expected anyone to stop. "You don't want to do this," Andrew said, taking a step closer. He kept his voice level, the same tone he used with the teenagers at the community center when they were about to make a choice they couldn't take back. "Whatever's going on, there's another way. You don't know anything about what's going on." But the young man's voice cracked, and Andrew heard the fear underneath the anger. "I know you're scared. I know you probably need money for something important. Medicine, maybe? Rent?" Andrew took another step. "I know you don't want to hurt anyone." The woman pressed herself flatter against the wall. In the strange, suspended moment, Andrew caught her eyes and saw something unexpected. She was studying him. Even with a knife at her throat, she was taking his measure. "I'll give you my wallet," Andrew said. "Credit cards, cash, whatever you need. But let her go first." "Andrew." The woman spoke for the first time since his arrival, and his name in her mouth sounded strange. Foreign. "Don't." He'd never told her his name. The young man's eyes darted between them, confused. "You two know each other?" "No," the woman said quickly. Too quickly. But Andrew was already moving. The moment of distraction was enough. He lunged forward, grabbing the young man's wrist, twisting until the knife clattered to the wet pavement. They struggled for a moment. Andrew was older but bigger, and the adrenaline made him strong. The young man broke free and ran, footsteps echoing off the alley walls until they faded into the sound of rain. Andrew stood there breathing hard, water dripping from his hair into his eyes. The knife lay between them like a question mark. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, but she was shaking. Her whole body, small tremors that she was trying to control. Andrew shrugged out of his jacket and offered it to her. "I'm fine," she said, but she took the jacket anyway. "Thank you. How did you know my name?" She looked at him for a long moment, as if deciding something. "Your wallet fell out of your pocket when you grabbed him. I could see your driver's license." Andrew checked his pockets. His wallet was exactly where it always was. "We should call the police?" he said. "No." The word came out sharp, final. "I mean, he's gone. No harm done. I'd rather just go home." There was something in her voice that made him want to push, but also made him step back. He'd worked with enough victims to know when someone needed space. "At least let me walk you to the metro. Or call you a cab. I have a car." She pointed toward the mouth of the alley, where a black sedan waited with its engine running. How had he missed that? "Elena?" A man's voice called from the direction of the car. "Elena, are you?" He appeared at the edge of the alley, tall and broad-shouldered, the kind of build that suggested military training. When he saw Andrew, his hand moved instinctively inside his jacket. "It's fine, David. This man helped me." David's eyes swept the scene, the knife on the ground, Andrew's soaked clothes, the woman wrapped in his jacket. His hand stayed where it was. "Ma'am, we should go. Now." Elena, her name was Elena, looked at Andrew one more time. There was something in her expression he couldn't read. Gratitude, yes, but something else. Something that looked almost like regret. "Thank you," she said again. She started to take off his jacket. "Keep it," Andrew said. "It's just a jacket." She smiled then, and for a moment she looked younger. "It's not just a jacket to you. I can tell." She was right. Lily had given it to him for Father's Day 2 years ago, saved up her allowance for 3 months to buy it. But looking at this woman, Elena found he didn't mind. "Be safe," he said. She nodded and walked toward the car. David held the door open for her, still watching Andrew with professional suspicion. Just before she got in, she turned back. "Andrew Briggs," she said. 1247 Maple Avenue, Silver Spring, Maryland. 34 years old. Father of one daughter, Lily, age 7. "You work at the Brightwood Community Center." His blood went cold. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know about good people." She got into the car. "Someone will be in touch." The sedan pulled away, leaving Andrew alone in the alley with the rain and a growing sense that his life had just taken a turn he couldn't understand. He picked up his daughter's art supplies. Half the watercolors had leaked out, but maybe he could salvage enough for her project. Maybe Mrs. Rodriguez would understand if they were a little water damaged. "My dad can fix anything." Andrew walked back into the rain, not knowing that 3 blocks away, Elena Vasquez was sitting in the back of an armored car, already making phone calls that would change both their lives forever. Not knowing that in 18 hours, his face would be on the front page of every newspaper in America. Not knowing that saving a stranger would cost him everything he thought he wanted, and give him everything he never knew he needed. The apartment was quiet when Andrew finally made it home. He hung his wet clothes in the bathroom and checked on Lily, who was sleeping with her arms wrapped around a stuffed elephant that had seen better days. Her breathing was soft and even, and for a moment he just stood in the doorway, letting the normalcy of it wash over him. She'd left him a drawing on the Kit Briggs table stick figures under a rainbow, with "Best Daddy" written in crayon across the top. He smiled and stuck it on the refrigerator next to a dozen others just like it. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister Sarah. "How was your day?" Still excited about her project. He started to type back, then stopped. How could he explain what had just happened when he didn't understand it himself? Woman, alley, knife. She knew my name. She knew where I lived. Fine. Long day. Tell you later. Andrew made himself a sandwich he didn't want and sat at the Kit Briggs table, staring at his reflection in the dark window. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, but water still dripped from the fire escape, a irregular rhythm that matched his heartbeat. Someone will be in touch. He should have asked more questions. Should have insisted on calling the police. Should have demanded to know how a stranger had memorized his personal information. But there had been something about Elena that had made those questions feel small. Something that suggested she was used to being protected, used to making quick exits, used to having information about people she'd never met. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Briggs? This is Rebecca Martinez from the Washington Post. I'm calling about the incident tonight on K Street. Andrew hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. Mr. Briggs, this is Jake Morrison from Channel 7 News. We'd like to... He turned the phone off and sat back in his chair. Through the thin walls of the apartment building, he could hear Mrs. Park's television, Mr. Williams' late-night coughing, the normal sounds of people living their normal lives. Tomorrow, Lily would wake up expecting watercolors for her school project. Tomorrow, he'd go to work at the community center and help kids with their homework and listen to teenagers complain about their parents. Tomorrow would be Tuesday, and Tuesday was always the same. Except it wouldn't be. Because tonight, he'd stepped into an alley and into something bigger than himself, and Elena, whoever Elena really was, looked at him like she was memorizing his face. Andrew finished his sandwich and went to bed, not knowing that at that very moment, 3 miles away in a secure hotel suite, Elena Vasquez was sitting across from her campaign manager, explaining why they needed to change everything. "You're sure about this?" the campaign manager asked. Elena looked out the window toward the city where Andrew Briggs was falling asleep in his small apartment, where his daughter was dreaming of rainbows and art projects, where life was about to become much more complicated for a man who'd simply tried to do the right thing. "I'm sure," she said. "He's exactly what this campaign needs. He's a liability, Elena. A single father, with no political experience, no media training. No, he's real." Elena's voice was quiet but certain. He stepped into that alley knowing he might get hurt, knowing he might not make it home to his daughter, not because he had to, not because someone was paying him, because it was right. She touched the jacket he'd given her, still damp with rain and smelling faintly of the laundry detergent that single fathers use because it's on sale and gets the job done. "That's the kind of person I want speaking for me. That's the kind of person this country needs to see." The campaign manager made notes on his tablet, already calculating risks and opportunities, already planning how to turn a random act of kindness into a political narrative. Neither of them thought to ask what Andrew Briggs might want. Neither of them considered that some people don't want to be saved. Andrew woke to the sound of his phone buzzing against the nightstand like an angry wasp. He'd forgotten to charge it properly, and the battery was dying in stutters and gasps. 5:47 a.m. Still dark outside. Lily wouldn't be up for another hour. He padded to the Kit Briggs in his boxers and t-shirt, started the coffee maker, and plugged his phone into the charger by the microwave. The moment it powered back on, it exploded with notifications. Missed calls, text messages, voicemails, all from numbers he didn't recognize. The first text message made his stomach drop. "Check the news, now." Sarah Andrew grabbed the remote and turned on the small television mounted under the Kit Briggs cabinet. Channel 7 was running the morning show, cheerful anchors discussing the weather and traffic. He flipped to CNN. His own face stared back at him. The photo was grainy, clearly taken from security camera footage, but it was unmistakably him. Standing in the alley, jacket soaked with rain, one hand extended toward someone just out of frame. The headline ran across the bottom of the screen, "Hero or Plant? Mysterious Good Samaritan saves Senator Vasquez." The incident occurred around 8:45 p.m. yesterday evening when Senator Elena Vasquez, widely expected to announce her presidential campaign next week, was allegedly confronted by an armed assailant in downtown Washington. According to sources close to the senator's security detail, an unidentified man intervened, disarming the attacker and allowing the senator to escape unharmed. Andrew sank onto a Kit Briggs stool, coffee forgotten. Senator Elena Vasquez. Presidential campaign, the anchor continued, has raised questions about the timing of the incident, coming just days before the senator's expected campaign announcement. Opposition researchers are already questioning whether this was a genuine attack or an elaborate publicity stunt designed to generate sympathy for the senator's campaign. The image switched to file footage of Elena at a podium, speaking to a crowd of supporters. She looked different in the daylight, younger, more polished, every inch the politician. But Andrew recognized the eyes, the way she held her shoulders when she was thinking. The identity of the alleged Good Samaritan remains unknown, though sources tell CNN that the senator's team has been in contact with the individual. We've reached out to Senator Vasquez's office for comment, but they have not responded to our requests. Andrew's phone rang. Sarah. Andrew, what the hell is going on? Mom called me at 5 in the morning screaming about seeing you on the news. Are you okay? Is Lily okay? I'm fine, we're fine. Andrew rubbed his forehead. It's complicated. Complicated, Andrew? They're saying you might be part of some conspiracy. They're saying this woman might be running for president and that you... I didn't know who she was, Sarah. I just saw someone in trouble. A pause. He could hear his sister's boys arguing in the background, the chaos of a family getting ready for school. You're telling me you accidentally saved a presidential candidate? I guess so. Oh, Andrew. Sarah's voice was softer now. You have to call Mom. She's been calling everyone in Silver Spring trying to find out if you're in some kind of trouble. Through the wall, Andrew heard Mrs. Park's television turn on, then Mr. Williams. Word was spreading through the building like water through cracks. I have to go. Lily's going to wake up soon, and I need to... Andrew. Sarah's voice was sharp now. This is serious. If this woman is really running for president, if this really happened the way they're saying, your life is about to change. Lily's life is about to change. You need to think about getting a lawyer. A lawyer? Sarah, I helped someone. That's it. That's not it anymore. After Sarah hung up, Andrew stood in his Kit Briggs, listening to the sound of his daughter's breathing through the thin walls, the sound of the coffee maker finishing its cycle, the sound of his phone buzzing with calls from numbers he didn't recognize. On the television, they were showing the alley now. Crime scene tape, police cars, reporters standing where he'd wrestled a knife away from a desperate young man just 12 hours ago. It looked different in the daylight, smaller, less dramatic. They were making it into something it wasn't. Daddy? Lily stood in the Kit Briggs doorway, still in her pajamas, her hair sticking up in 7 different directions. She was holding her stuffed elephant and looking at the television with the kind of confusion that 7-year-olds wear when the adult world stops making sense. Is that you on TV? Andrew turned off the television and knelt down to her level. Hey kiddo, yeah, that's me. Why are you on TV? Are you famous now? He pulled her into a hug, breathing in the smell of her shampoo and the faint sweetness of sleep. No, baby, I'm not famous. I just helped someone last night, and sometimes when you help people, other people want to talk about it. Like when I helped Mrs. Park carry her groceries? Kind of like that. But Mrs. Park didn't put me on TV. Andrew smiled despite everything. No, she didn't. Are you hungry? We can make pancakes. Lily brightened. Pancakes were for special occasions, and she had a 7-year-old's ability to adapt to new definitions of special. While she chattered about her plans for the day art project, recess, showing Emma her new stickers, Andrew tried to think through his options. He could ignore the calls, go to work, pretend this would blow over. He could call the number Elena had given him. Wait, she hadn't given him a number. Someone will be in touch, she'd said. His phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Mr. Briggs, this is David from last night. We need to talk. Are you available this morning? David? The man with the military bearing who'd been waiting by the car. Andrew looked at Lily, who was carefully pouring syrup on her pancakes in a perfect spiral pattern, tongue poking out in concentration. This was their life. Small, quiet, predictable, safe. But safe was about to become a memory. He texted back, "After I drop my daughter at school, 9 a.m. Where?" The response came immediately, "Brightwood Community Center. We'll meet you there." Of course they knew where he worked. The Brightwood Community Center sat on a corner lot between a laundromat and a place that sold cell phone repairs and tax preparation services. Andrew had been working there for 3 years, ever since the divorce, when he'd needed a job with flexible hours and health insurance. It wasn't glamorous peeling paint on the outside, fluorescent lights that hummed too loud on the inside, but it was his. He dropped Lily at school 45 minutes early, sitting with her in the cafeteria until other kids started arriving. She'd been excited about the art project, even though half the watercolors were still damp and muddy from last night's rain. Mrs. Tsef, Mr. A.T. Rodriguez had taken one look at the damaged supplies and Andrew's tired face and asked no questions. "See you at pickup, Daddy," Lily had called, running toward her classroom with her backpack bouncing behind her. Now Andrew sat at his desk in the center's main office, watching a black sedan pull up outside. The same car from last night, he was pretty sure. David got out first, scanning the street like he expected trouble. Then Elena. She looked different in daylight. Still polished, still professional, but somehow smaller, more human. She wore a navy blue coat and carried a leather bag that probably cost more than Andrew made in a month, but when she walked through the community center's front door, she moved carefully, like someone who understood she was entering someone else's space. "Mr. Briggs." David's handshake was firm, his eyes constantly moving. "Thank you for meeting with us." "Andrew," Elena said, and her voice was warmer than he'd expected, "I hope we're not disrupting your work." "It's fine. Though I should mention that half the neighborhood probably saw you pull up." She smiled. "We're counting on it." That was when Andrew realized this wasn't just a thank you visit. "Why don't we sit down?" Elena gestured toward the small conference room where Andrew usually met with parents about their kids' after-school programs. "I have something I'd like to discuss with you." They sat around a table that had seen better decades. Elena and David on one side, Andrew on the other. Through the window, Andrew could see kids from the morning program playing basketball on the cracked outdoor court. "First," Elena said, "I want to apologize for last night, for leaving the way we did, for not explaining things properly. It wasn't fair to you. You were in shock. Someone just tried to rob you. Yes, but you deserve better. You put yourself at risk for a stranger, and I handled it poorly." David leaned forward. "Andrew, what I'm about to tell you is confidential. Can you agree to that?" Andrew looked between them. "Depends on what you're about to tell me." Elena laughed, and the sound was genuinely amused. "I told you he was smart, David." She turned to Andrew. "Senator Elena Vasquez. I represent California in the United States Senate, and on Monday morning I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States." Andrew nodded. "I figured that part out from the news this morning. What you probably didn't figure out is that last night wasn't random. The young man who confronted Mahi's name is Kevin Torres. By the way, he wasn't just some desperate criminal, he was recruited, paid. Someone wanted that incident to happen." The room went quiet except for the sound of basketballs bouncing outside. "You're saying it was staged?" "I'm saying someone staged an attack on me, yes. What they didn't count on was you." David pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. "Kevin Torres, 19 years old, student at George Washington University. Up until 3 weeks ago, he had no criminal record, no debt, no obvious motivations for armed robbery. Then, suddenly, he's got $5,000 in his checking account and he's buying knives on the internet." Andrew stared at the photo on the screen. The young man looked even younger in his student ID picture, fresh-faced and smiling. "Why would someone want to stage an attack on you?" "Because," Elena said, 3 days ago, I was polling at 12% in the Democratic primary. dead last among serious candidates. My campaign was running out of money, running out of time, running out of hope. An assassination attempt and a failed one, that's the kind of story that changes everything. But you're the victim. Why would you want? Andrew stopped. You're saying your opponents did this. We think so, though proving it is going to be challenging. Andrew leaned back in his chair. Outside, one of the kids made a three-pointer and celebrated like he'd won the NBA Finals. Normal life, continuing. What does this have to do with me? Elena and David exchanged a look. The story is already out there, Elena said. By tonight, every news station in the country is going to be running footage of you disarming Kevin Torres. You're going to be the hero who saved the presidential candidate, whether you want to be or not. I don't want to be. I know, but Andrew, this is bigger than what we want now. Someone tried to manipulate a presidential election through violence. Real violence. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't acted, Kevin Torres would have gone through with it. I could have been seriously hurt, or worse. What exactly are you asking me? Elena took a breath. I'm asking you to help me find out who did this, and I'm asking you to consider joining my campaign. Andrew stood up. I'm sorry, what? Andrew, in 12 hours, you've become one of the most famous people in America. By tomorrow, you'll be getting job offers, book deals, movie rights. Everyone is going to want a piece of your story. I don't want any of that. I know. That's exactly why I need you. Elena stood too, moving to the window where she could see the kids playing basketball. Do you know what the #1 problem with American politics is right now? Where do I start? People don't trust us. They don't believe we're real. They don't believe we understand their lives. They don't believe we actually care about anything other than getting elected. She turned back to him. But you stepped into an alley for a stranger. You gave your jacket to someone you'd never met. You risked your life because it was the right thing to do. That's not political. That's just human. Senator, Elena, I have a 7-year-old daughter. I have a job. I have a life. A small, quiet life that I've worked very hard to build. I can't just throw that away to join your campaign. I'm not asking you to throw anything away. I'm asking you to help me show this country what real service looks like, what real courage looks like. David spoke for the first time in several minutes. Andrew, whether you join us or not, your life has already changed. By this afternoon, there will be reporters camped outside your apartment building. By tomorrow, they'll be interviewing your neighbors, your coworkers, your daughter's teachers. You can try to ignore it, but it won't ignore you. Andrew felt something cold settle in his stomach. Are you threatening me? No, Elena said quickly. He's warning you. This is what happens when ordinary people do extraordinary things in public. The machine takes over, and you either guide the story or the story guides you. Through the window, Andrew watched one of his kids, Jamal, 8 years old, lived with his grandmother, miss a shot and hang his head in disappointment. Andrew had been working with him for months on not giving up when things didn't go his way. If I said yes, Andrew said slowly, what would it mean? What would you want me to do? Travel with me, speak at events, help me connect with voters who've given up on politics. Show them that people like you, people who care more about doing right than looking good, are still involved in this process. People like me, single parents, working people, people who didn't go to Harvard or Yale, who don't have trust funds or family connections, people who understand what it's like to worry about paying rent and buying groceries and making sure their kids have what they need. Andrew thought about Lily's art supplies, soggy and damaged in last night's rain, about the watercolors he'd tried to save with paper towels this morning, about the way she'd looked at the television screen, confused by seeing her father in a world that had nothing to do with pancakes and homework and bedtime stories. What about my daughter? She'd come with us. Private tutoring, security, everything she needs. Andrew, I know this is overwhelming. I know it's not what you planned. But sometimes the right thing and the easy thing aren't the same. Elena moved closer, and Andrew could see the exhaustion behind her polished exterior. Someone is trying to buy an election with violence. They think Americans are so cynical, so disconnected, that we'll believe anything they put in front of us. I need help proving them wrong." Andrew's phone buzzed. Text message from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Several reporters here asking about Lily. I told them school policy prohibits interviews. You may want to pick her up early today." The cold feeling in his stomach spread to his chest. "They're at her school?" David checked his phone. "I'll have someone there in 15 minutes. Discreet security, just to make sure she's safe." "Safe from what?" "From people who want to use her to get to you. From photographers who don't care about consent laws when it comes to kids. From the circus that's about to descend on your life." Andrew closed his eyes. When he opened them, Elena was watching him with something that looked like sympathy. "I need time to think." "Of course. But Andrew, you don't have much time. This story is moving fast. And if you're not part of shaping it, someone else will shape it for you." They left him alone in the conference room with his thoughts and his phone and the sound of kids playing basketball outside. In a few hours, he'd pick up Lily from school and try to explain why people with cameras were asking about her daddy. Tonight, he'd make dinner and help her with homework and read her a bedtime story, pretending everything was normal. But nothing was normal anymore. And somewhere in Washington, people were making plans that involved Andrew Briggs, whether he liked it or not. Andrew picked up Lily 2 hours early, walking through a gauntlet of news vans and reporters who shouted questions he pretended not to hear. She came running out of the school building with her backpack and a paper bag lunch she hadn't had time to eat, chattering about her day until she saw the cameras. "Daddy, why are all those people here? They want to talk to me about last night. But we're going home now." "Can I be on TV too?" "No, baby. This is grown-up stuff." David's security team, 2 women in casual clothes who looked like soccer moms but moved like athletes, flanked them as they walked to Andrew's beat-up Honda Civic. The reporters followed, cameras rolling, microphones extended like accusatory fingers. "Mr. Briggs, can you comment on reports that you knew Senator Vasquez before the incident?" "Andrew, is it true you're being offered a position with the campaign? How does it feel to be called a hero?" Andrew buckled Lily into her booster seat and drove home in silence, watching the security detail follow in an unmarked SUV. In his rearview mirror, he could see Lily playing with her stuffed elephant, oblivious to the weight of the moment. Their apartment building was surrounded. "Jesus," Andrew breathed, pulling into the alley behind the building where the dumpsters were kept. Even here, 2 reporters were waiting, cameras ready. His phone rang. "Elena." "Andrew, I'm sorry. We're working on clearing them out, but it's going to take time." "How long?" "Days, maybe weeks. This story has legs." Through the windshield, Andrew watched one of the reporters approach his car. The woman from the security detail intercepted him smoothly, guiding him away with a smile and what looked like polite conversation. "There's another option," Elena said. "A safe house. Just for tonight, until we can figure out a longer-term solution." "A safe house?" "Elena, I'm not a witness in a mob trial. I'm a social worker who helped someone. You're the man who saved a presidential candidate. Whether you like it or not, that makes you a target." Lily looked up from her elephant. "Daddy, are we going home?" Andrew closed his eyes. "Where's this safe house?" "Virginia. It's quiet, secure. Lily would like it. There's a big yard, a swing set." "How do you know what my daughter would like?" A pause. "Because I have a daughter too. Had. She's in college now, but I remember what 7-year-olds need." Something in Elena's voice made Andrew look at her differently through the phone. Not as a politician, but as a mother who understood the weight of choices that affected children. 30 minutes, Andrew said. "I need to pack some things. David will coordinate with the security team. And Andrew? Thank you." The safe house was a colonial-style home in Falls Church, the kind of place where senators and cabinet members lived when they wanted to pretend they were regular people. Lily was enchanted by the backyard, which was bigger than their entire apartment, and immediately claimed the swing set as her personal territory. "This is like a vacation house," she announced, running from room to room. Andrew sat on the back porch, watching her play in the fading afternoon light. Elena had arrived an hour earlier, bringing Chinese takeout and an apology for turning their lives upside down. "She's resilient," Elena said, settling into the chair beside him. "She's 7. She thinks this is an adventure." "Maybe it is." Andrew gave her a look. "Sorry. I know this isn't easy." Elena opened a container of lo mein. "My daughter Sophia was about Lily's age when I first ran for Congress. I thought I could shield her from it, keep her life normal. But there's no such thing as normal when your parent is in politics." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "It's supposed to make you feel informed." Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "Andrew, I need you to understand something. This isn't going away. Win or lose, whether you join my campaign or not, you're part of this story now. The question is whether you want to have some control over how it's told." Through the Kit Briggs window, Andrew could see David and another security agent going through their evening routine, checking locks and sight lines. This was someone's life living in houses that weren't home, eating dinner with people whose job was to take bullets for you. "Tell me about your daughter," Andrew said. Elena smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked genuinely relaxed. "Sophia's at Stanford, studying environmental science. She wants to save the world through renewable energy policy. Gets that from her father. He was an engineer before he died." "I'm sorry." "Cancer. 5 years ago." Elena picked at her food. "Sophia blames me a little. Thinks if I'd spent less time in Washington, more time at home, maybe I would have noticed the symptoms earlier. Maybe we could have caught it sooner." "Do you blame yourself?" "Every day." Elena looked out at Lily, who was trying to swing high enough to touch the tree branches with her feet. "But I also know that the work we do in Washington affects millions of families. Millions of kids like Lily. And sometimes you have to choose between being a perfect parent and being someone who can make the world better for all the other parents and children. That's a hell of a choice." "It is. And I'm asking you to make it." Andrew set down his fork. "Elena, I need you to be honest with me. Really honest. What are the chances that joining your campaign makes my life, makes Lily's life better?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, in the short term, probably 0. It's going to be chaos, travel, media scrutiny, people picking apart every decision you've ever made. They'll find out about your divorce, your finances, every mistake you've made as a parent. That's what I was afraid of. But Andrew, there's something else. Something I didn't tell you this morning." Elena turned to face him fully. "We found Kevin Torres." Andrew felt his stomach drop. "Where?" "In a hotel room in Baltimore. Apparent suicide. He left a note confessing to the robbery attempt, saying he acted alone." "You don't believe that?" "Kevin Torres was a kid who got in over his head. He wasn't suicidal, as roommates say. He was making plans for next semester, talking about his girlfriend, excited about an internship he'd just landed. And the note? It was typed, not handwritten. No fingerprints except his." The swing set creaked as Lily pumped her legs, oblivious to the conversation happening 20 feet away. "They killed him." "We think so. Which means whoever orchestrated this attack is willing to commit murder to cover their tracks." Elena's voice was steady, but Andrew could see the tension in her shoulders. "Andrew, this isn't just about election politics anymore. This is about stopping people who think violence is an acceptable campaign strategy. And you think having me on your campaign will help with that? I think having someone like you, someone real, someone unafraid to do the right things, ends a message that we won't be intimidated. That ordinary Americans still believe in stepping up when it matters." Andrew watched Lily jump off the swing and run toward them, grass stains on her knees and joy written across her face. "Daddy, Elena, come push me on the swing. I want to go really high." Elena smiled. "I used to push Sophia on swings just like that. She always wanted to go higher than was safe. Did you let her?" "Sometimes. You can't keep them in bubbles forever." Lily grabbed both their hands, tugging them toward the swing set. "Come on, before it gets dark." As Elena pushed Lily on the swing, Andrew found himself watching not the politician but the mother, the woman who checked to make sure the chain wasn't twisted, who warned Lily to hold on tight, who stepped back at just the right moment to let a child feel the thrill of flying. "Higher!" Lily shrieked with delight. "I want to touch the clouds." "Be careful what you wish for," Elena called back, but she pushed harder. Andrew's phone buzzed. Text message from Sarah. "Mom saw you on the evening news. She wants to know if you're okay and why you haven't called her back." He'd forgotten about the rest of his family, the rest of his life, in the space of a single day. Tomorrow, he'd have to explain to his mother why her son was suddenly living in a safe house with a presidential candidate. Tomorrow, he'd have to call his ex-wife and tell her why their daughter's life was about to become public property. Tomorrow, he'd have to decide whether to step further into this strange new world or try to find his way back to the simple life he'd built from the wreckage of his marriage. "Daddy," Lily called from the swing. "Are you going to push me too?" Andrew walked over and took his place behind the swing. Lily leaned back against his chest for a moment before he pushed her forward into the gathering dusk. "Where are we going to live now?" she asked as she swung back toward him. "I don't know yet, kiddo. Maybe here for a little while. I like Elena. She's nice. And she knows how to push swings the right way." "What's the right way?" "Not too scary, but not too boring either." Andrew caught Elena's eye over Lily's head. She was smiling, but there was something sad in her expression, something that looked like loss. "Lily," Elena said, "what do you want to be when you grow up?" "A teacher, like Mrs. Rodriguez. She helps kids learn things and she always has good snacks." "That's a wonderful thing to be. Teachers are some of the most important people in the world." "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Lily asked. Elena laughed. "Well, I'm already grown up. But I want to be president." "That sounds hard." "It is hard. But sometimes the most important jobs are the hardest ones." As the last light faded from the sky, Andrew pushed his daughter on a swing in a stranger's backyard and thought about choices. About Kevin Torres, dead in a hotel room in Baltimore. About reporters camped outside his apartment building. About a woman who wanted to be president asking him to help her save democracy. About the difference between keeping his daughter safe and teaching her what courage looked like. "Time to go inside," Andrew said finally. "It's getting cold." Lily dragged her feet to slow the swing. "Can we stay here tonight, please? I like this house." "We'll see." But as they walked back toward the house, Elena's security detail taking their positions for the night watch, Andrew realized that "we'll see" was becoming his answer to everything. Inside, Elena was already on the phone with her campaign manager, pacing the living room and speaking in the shorthand of political professionals. David was setting up laptops on the dining room table, creating a makeshift command center. This was their life. Always on, always moving, always 3 steps ahead of the next crisis. Lily tugged on Andrew's sleeve. "Daddy, are you going to help Elena become president?" Andrew knelt down to her level. "What do you think I should do?" "I think you should help her. She seems lonely." Out of the mouths of babes. "Why do you think she's lonely?" "She doesn't have anybody to push her on swings." Andrew glanced over at Elena, who was now sitting at the dining room table, surrounded by phones and laptops and people whose job was to manage her life. She caught his eye and smiled, but Lily was right, there was something lonely about the smile. "If I help Elena," Andrew said carefully, "it would mean traveling a lot. Going to different cities, meeting lots of new people. It might be scary sometimes. Would you be there?" "Yes." "Would Elena be there?" "Yes." Lily considered this. "Then it wouldn't be too scary. Adventures are only scary if you're by yourself." That night, after Lily was asleep in a bedroom that wasn't hers, Andrew sat in the Kitbriggs with Elena and a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. "She's right, you know," Elena said. "About the loneliness. I haven't pushed anyone on a swing in years. The job? The job. The ambition. The constant calculation of what every moment means for the next election." Elena rubbed her eyes. "Do you know when I last had a conversation that wasn't about politics?" "When?" "Tonight. With your daughter. When she asked what I wanted to be when I grow up, for just a second, I forgot that I was already grown up. Forgot that I was supposed to have all the answers." "What would you do?" If you weren't a politician, teach kindergarten. I wanted to be a teacher before I got angry about the world and decided I needed to fix it instead. Andrew smiled. Lily would love that. She'd be your favorite student. She already is. They sat in comfortable silence, two parents in a house that wasn't home, making decisions that would affect more lives than just their own. Elena? Yeah? If I do this, if I join your campaign, I need you to promise me something. What? That Lily comes first, always. If this gets too dangerous, too crazy, too much for a 7-year-old to handle, we walk away. No questions, no arguments. Elena nodded. I promise. And one more thing. I'm not your prop. I'm not your symbol. If you want my help, you get my opinions too. Even when you don't like them. Especially when I don't like them. Andrew extended his hand across the table. Then I guess we're doing this. Elena shook it, and Andrew felt the weight of the choice settle over him like a coat he wasn't sure he wanted to wear. Outside, the security detail maintained their quiet vigil, and somewhere in Washington, people were already planning how to use Andrew Briggs's decision to their advantage. But for now, in a Kit Briggs in Falls Church, a single father and a woman who wanted to be president were just two people who'd promised to help each other find their way home. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning in Des Moines, at a community center that looked remarkably like the one where Andrew worked back in D.C. Elena had chosen it deliberately, folding chairs instead of podiums, fluorescent lights instead of television staging, real people instead of political operatives filling the seats. Andrew stood at the back of the room with Lily, who was coloring in a book while her private tutor worked with another campaign staffer's child. 3 weeks into this new life, and she'd adapted with the resilience that only children possess. New cities were adventures, hotel rooms were sleepovers, campaign buses were moving playgrounds. Andrew envied her ability to find joy in uncertainty. Ladies and gentlemen, Elena said from the small stage, I want to tell you about a man named Andrew Briggs. He felt his chest tighten. They'd practiced this speech a dozen times, but hearing his name in front of 200 strangers still felt surreal. 3 weeks ago, Andrew was walking home from the store where he'd bought art supplies for his daughter's school project. He saw someone in trouble, and he didn't hesitate. He didn't think about his own safety, didn't consider the consequences, he just acted. Because that's what good people do. In the crowd, Andrew could see heads turning, people trying to spot him. He kept his eyes on Elena. Andrew isn't a politician. He's a social worker, a single father, someone who spends his days helping kids with their homework and teaching teenagers how to resolve conflicts without violence. He's exactly the kind of person we need more of in Washington, someone who leads with conscience instead of calculation. Elena paused, finding Andrew in the crowd. Andrew Briggs has agreed to join this campaign, not because he wants fame or power, but because he believes, like I do, that we can do better, that we must do better. The applause was warm, genuine. Andrew felt Lily's small hand slip into his. Is that lady talking about you, Daddy? Yeah, kiddo. She's saying nice things. She is. Today, Elena continued, I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States, and I'm asking Andrew to serve as my National Director of Community Engagement to help us remember that politics isn't about winning elections, it's about serving people. More applause. Camera flashes. Andrew saw reporters in the back typing frantically on their phones. But before we talk about my plans for this country, I want Andrew to tell you about his. This was the part they hadn't practiced. Elena had surprised him, and from the look on David's face in the wings, she'd surprised everyone else too. Andrew made his way to the front of the room, Lily trailing behind him. When he reached the microphone, she stood beside him, still clutching her coloring book. I didn't prepare a speech, Andrew said, and a few people laughed. 3 weeks ago, my biggest concern was making sure my daughter had watercolors for her art project. Now, I'm standing in Iowa talking to people about running for president. Life moves fast sometimes. He looked down at Lily, who was studying the crowd with the frank curiosity of childhood. My daughter asked me why I decided to help Elena. She wanted to know what a president does, why it matters, why we should care, and I realized that I'd never really explained it to her before. Politics felt like something that happened to other people, in places far away from our small apartment and our quiet life. Andrew found Elena in the crowd. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. But the truth is, politics isn't far away. It's in the community center where I work, where kids come for after-school programs because their parents can't afford childcare. It's in the school where my daughter learns, where teachers buy supplies with their own money because the district doesn't have enough funding. It's in the hospital where we took her when she broke her arm last year, and I had to choose between a copay I couldn't afford and making sure she got the care she needed. The room was quiet now, people leaning forward. I'm not here because I think I have all the answers. I'm here because I think we've forgotten how to ask the right questions. Questions like, how do we make sure every parent can afford to give their child what they need? How do we build communities where people look out for each other? How do we teach our kids that doing the right thing matters, even when it's hard? Lily tugged on his sleeve. Andrew leaned down and she whispered something in his ear. He smiled. My daughter wants me to tell you that she thinks being president sounds like a very hard job, but Elena seems like she'd be good at it because she knows how to push swings the right way, not too scary, but not too boring either. Laughter rippled through the crowd, warm and genuine. I think she's right. We need leaders who understand the balance between courage and care, between pushing for change and keeping people safe. We need leaders who remember that politics is about people, not power. Andrew stepped back from the microphone, but Elena gestured for him to stay. Andrew will be traveling with us throughout this campaign, she said, not as a prop or a symbol, but as a reminder of why we're doing this work. He'll be asking the questions that matter, holding us accountable to the promises we make, and making sure we never forget that behind every policy is a person, a family, a community that deserves our best effort. After the announcement, they drove through Iowa countryside that looked like something from a postcard. Lily napped in her car seat while Elena made phone calls and Andrew watched cornfields blur past the window. You didn't tell me you were going to put me on the spot like that, he said during a rare moment when Elena wasn't on the phone. I know, I'm sorry. But I wanted people to hear from you, not from a speech we'd scripted and polished until it didn't sound human anymore. What if I'd frozen up there? What if I'd said something stupid? Elena smiled. Then people would have seen that you're human. That's not a bad thing in politics, Andrew. It's just rare. His phone buzzed. Text from his ex-wife, Amanda. Saw the announcement on CNN. Are you insane? Andrew showed Elena the message. She winced. Amanda's not a fan of the campaign? Amanda's not a fan of uncertainty, or risk, or anything that might disrupt Lily's routine. Andrew typed back. We need to talk. Can you call tonight? The response came immediately. Already booked a flight to Iowa. We need to talk in person. Shit, Andrew said, then immediately looked at Lily to make sure she was still asleep. What? My ex-wife is coming to Iowa. This is not going to go well. Elena was quiet for a moment. Andrew, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Is there any chance Amanda might try to use this situation to challenge your custody arrangement? The question hit him like a physical blow. I don't know. Maybe. She's always thought I was too impulsive, too willing to take risks. This probably looks like exactly the kind of decision that proves her point. We should talk to the lawyers. Elena, if I lose custody of Lily. You won't. But we need to be prepared. That night, in a hotel room in Cedar Rapids, Andrew lay awake listening to his daughter's soft breathing and thinking about choices. Every decision felt like a stone thrown into still water, ripples spreading out in directions he couldn't predict or control. When his phone rang at midnight, he answered without checking the caller ID. Andrew? Amanda's voice was tight with stress. We need to talk. Now. It's midnight, Amanda. Lily's sleeping. I'm in the lobby. Come down. Andrew found her in the hotel bar, nursing a glass of wine, and looking like she'd aged a year in the 3 weeks since he'd last seen her. Amanda was still beautiful, the kind of careful, controlled beauty that came from regular gym sessions and expensive skincare. But there was something brittle about her now. "You look tired," she said when he sat down across from her. "Hello to you too. Andrew, what the hell are you doing?" "I'm helping someone I believe in run for president. You're dragging our daughter around the country, exposing her to God knows what kind of security risks, disrupting her education, her routine, her stability. She has a tutor. She's seeing more of the country than most kids see in a lifetime. She's happy, Amanda. She's 7. She doesn't understand what happy means in this context." Andrew ordered a beer he didn't want and tried to find the right words. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to come home. Bring Lily home. Go back to your job at the community center and let the politicians handle politics." "And if I don't?" Amanda's silence was answer enough. "You'll fight me for custody. I'll do what I have to do to protect my daughter. Our daughter. And she doesn't need protecting from me." "Andrew, there are people following you around with cameras. There are security guards outside her hotel room. Someone tried to kill the woman you're working for. Someone tried to rob her. It's different, is it? Can you honestly tell me that Lily is safer traveling around the country with a presidential candidate than she would be at home with me?" Andrew drank his beer and thought about Lily on the swing set in Falls Church, laughing as Elena pushed her higher. About the way she'd adapted to hotel rooms and campaign buses, making friends with staffers' children, and treating every new city like a discovery. "She's happy, Amanda, really happy. Happier than I've seen her since the divorce. Because it's new and exciting. But what happens when the novelty wears off? What happens when she gets tired of living out of suitcases? What happens when someone gets hurt? What happens if I teach her that when you believe in something, you fight for it? What happens if I show her that ordinary people can make a difference? What happens if you get yourself killed trying to prove a point?" They sat in silence. Two people who'd once loved each other enough to make a child together, now separated by choices that felt impossible to reconcile. "I want to see her," Amanda said finally. "Of course, she's your daughter too. I want to spend time with her, without cameras, without security, without politicians. I want to take her home for a weekend." Andrew felt his chest tighten. "Amanda, I'm not asking for much. 1 weekend a month. Let her remember what normal feels like. This is normal now. This is our life. For how long? Until the election? Until Elena loses and you're back to being nobody special? Until the next crisis? The next cause? The next reason to upend everything?" Amanda leaned forward, and Andrew could see tears in her eyes. "I know you think I'm being selfish. I know you think I don't understand what you're trying to do. But Andrew, I watch the news. I see what happens to people who get caught up in politics. They get chewed up and spit out. Their families get destroyed. Their children pay the price. Lily's not paying any price. Yet." Andrew finished his beer and stood up. "You can see her tomorrow. We'll figure out the weekend thing. But Amanda, I'm not walking away from this. I can't. Even if it costs you your daughter. It won't come to that." "How do you know?" Andrew didn't have an answer for that. He left Amanda in the hotel bar and rode the elevator back to the room where his daughter was sleeping, dreaming whatever 7-year-olds dream when their world has suddenly become much larger and more complicated. He checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Elena, 2 from David, 17 text messages from reporters and campaign staffers and family members who all wanted something from him, but there was also a message from Lily's tutor. She wrote a story today about a girl who travels around the country helping people. Thought you might like to see it. Attached was a photo of a handwritten story in careful second-grade cursive, "The Girl Who Helped the Lady President" by Lily Briggs. Andrew read it twice, then saved it to his phone and climbed into the second bed in the hotel room. Through the window, he could see the lights of Cedar Rapids, a small city in a big country where tomorrow they'd ask people to believe that change was possible. In the bed next to him, Lily stirred in her sleep and whispered something he couldn't quite hear. Something that sounded like, "Higher, Daddy, push me higher." Andrew closed his eyes and tried not to think about how far they'd already come, or how much farther they had to fall. The phone call came at 3:17 a.m. on a Thursday in New Hampshire. Andrew was dreaming about the alley again, the knife, the rain, the moment when everything changed when David's voice cut through the darkness. "Andrew, wake up. We have a problem." Andrew sat up in the hotel bed, immediately alert. Beside him, Lily slept undisturbed, her stuffed elephant tucked under her chin. "What kind of problem?" "The Kevin Torres kind. Get dressed. Meet us in Elena's suite in 5 minutes." Andrew pulled on jeans and a sweater, checked that Lily was still sleeping, and stepped into the hallway where one of the security detail was already positioned outside his door. "She'll be fine," the agent said quietly. Sarah's watching her. Elena's suite was buzzing with activity despite the early hour. Campaign staffers hunched over laptops, phones pressed to ears, the controlled chaos of a crisis in motion. Elena sat at the center of it all, still in her pajamas but fully awake, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger and more vulnerable. "Andrew," she said when she saw him. "Thank God. Sit down." David handed him a tablet. "This went live 20 minutes ago. The video was grainy, obviously shot with a hidden camera, but the audio was clear enough." Kevin Torres, the young man who'd held a knife to Elena's throat, sitting across from someone whose face wasn't visible. "So you understand what you need to do?" The hidden figure was saying. "I understand, but what if something goes wrong? What if she gets hurt?" "She won't get hurt. You're not going to actually stab her, Kevin. You're just going to scare her. Create a scene. Give her a chance to look brave. And then what?" "Then you disappear. The money we discussed will be in your account within 24 hours. You take a semester abroad, lay low until after the election." Andrew looked up at Elena. "This proves it. This proves the attack was staged." "Keep watching," David said. The video continued. Kevin Torres asking more questions, the hidden figure providing reassurances. And then at the end, a moment that made Andrew's blood run cold. "What about the guy who interfered? Briggs? What about him? He wasn't supposed to be there. He screwed everything up." "Briggs is not your problem. We'll handle Briggs." The video ended. "Jesus," Andrew breathed. "It gets worse," Elena said. "The video was posted on a conspiracy theory website with a story claiming that I staged the whole thing. That Kevin Torres was working for me, not against me. That you were in on it from the beginning." Andrew stared at the tablet. "People will believe that? People want to believe it. It confirms what they already think about politicians, that we're all corrupt, all willing to do anything for power." David pulled up another screen. "Twitter's exploding. Staged attack is trending. Fake hero. Elena lies." It's everywhere. But the video proves Elena's innocent. It proves someone else was behind the attack. "The video proves Kevin Torres was working with someone," David corrected. "But the face isn't visible, the voice is distorted. And the narrative they're pushing is that Elena's team made this video to cover up their own involvement." Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where news vans were already gathering despite the early hour. "There's more," she said quietly. "Kevin Torres isn't dead." Andrew felt the world tilt. "What?" "He's alive. In protective custody. Has been since the night after the attack. The body in the hotel room was staged another homeless man. Similar build, similar age. Kevin's been talking to the FBI for 3 weeks. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because we weren't sure who we could trust. Because the fewer people who knew, the safer Kevin would be." Elena turned back to him. "The FBI wanted to keep him hidden until they could build a case against whoever hired him. But someone leaked his location. He was moved to a new safe house last night, and that's when he decided to go public with everything he knows." David handed Andrew another tablet. "This is the full interview. Kevin Torres talking to a reporter from the Post, explaining how he was recruited, how he was paid, what he was told to do." Andrew watched Kevin Torres alive, scared but determined to tell his story to a camera. How he'd been approached by someone claiming to represent a political research firm. How he'd been offered money to test the senator's security procedures. How the plan had changed at the last minute, becoming something more dangerous, more real. "He's brave," Andrew said. "He's dead," David replied. "Or he will be, once whoever hired him realizes he's talking." Elena sat back down, suddenly looking exhausted. "Andrew, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer." "Okay. Are you in this with me, or are you done?" Andrew looked around the room at the campaign staffers who'd stopped their work to listen, at David, who was already planning the next move, at Elena, who was waiting for an answer that would determine the direction of her campaign and possibly her life. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this is about to get ugly. Uglier than anything we've seen so far. They tried to kill Kevin Torres to keep him quiet. They've released a video that makes both of us look like conspirators. By tomorrow, every news station in the country will be asking whether the man who saved me was actually working with me from the beginning." Elena leaned forward. "If you stay with this campaign, they'll come after you harder than they've come after anyone. They'll dig into your past, your finances, your divorce. They'll question your fitness as a parent. They'll make your life and Lily's life a living hell. And if I leave? If you leave, you might be able to go back to some version of your old life. You'll always be the man who saved a presidential candidate, but the story will die down eventually. You and Lily can disappear back into anonymity." Andrew thought about Amanda, probably awake in her hotel room a few floors down, checking the news and preparing the custody arguments that would take Lily away from him. He thought about Lily herself, sleeping peacefully, while adults made decisions that would shape her entire future. "What would you do, if you were me?" Elena smiled sadly. "I'd run. I'd take my daughter and run as far and as fast as I could. But I'm not brave enough to be you, Andrew. I'm a politician. I calculate risks and benefits. I think about polls and focus groups and media strategies. You're the one who steps into alleys when people need help." Andrew stood up and walked to the window. The news vans were multiplying in the parking lot like some kind of electronic virus. Soon there would be reporters, cameras, questions shouted from sidewalks. "There's something else," he said without turning around. "Amanda's here. She's threatening to fight me for custody if I don't leave the campaign." The room went quiet. "Shit," Elena said finally. "Andrew, I'm sorry. I never wanted—" "I know." Andrew turned back to the room. "But here's the thing. 3 weeks ago, I was a single father working at a community center, trying to give my daughter a good life. And I was failing. Not completely, but failing. We had enough money for rent and food, but not much else. She was happy, but small happy, safe happy." He looked at Elena. "Since we've been on this campaign, I've watched her grow in ways I never expected. She's more confident, more curious about the world. She asks better questions. She thinks bigger thoughts. She's becoming the kind of person who might actually change things." "But at what cost?" David asked quietly. "I don't know yet. But I know that if I walk away now, if I teach her that we run when things get difficult, that we give up when people try to scare us, I'll be failing her in a different way." Andrew sat back down. "So I'm staying. But I have conditions." Elena nodded. "Name them." "First, no more secrets. If there's something that affects me or Lily, I need to know. Immediately." "Agreed." "Second, we fight this the right way. No dirty tricks, no playing games the way they do. We tell the truth, even when it hurts. Even if it costs us the election? Especially if it costs us the election." Elena extended her hand. "Deal." Andrew shook it, sealing a choice that felt both inevitable and impossible. "Good," David said, already moving back to his laptop. "Because we have about 2 hours before the morning shows start, and we need a strategy." For the next hour, they planned their response. Elena would go on every morning show that would have her, telling the truth about Kevin Torres, about the video, about the conspiracy to manipulate the election. Andrew would give his own interviews, explaining his role, his motivations, his decision to stay with the campaign despite the allegations. They would be transparent, honest, vulnerable. All the things that conventional political wisdom said would get them destroyed. It's going to be brutal, David warned. They'll ask you if you're lying. They'll ask if you're being paid. They'll ask if you're using your daughter as a prop. Let them ask, Andrew said. We'll answer. At 5:30 a.m., Andrew went back to his room to shower and change clothes. Lily was awake, sitting in bed with her coloring book, humming softly to herself. "Morning, kiddo? Sleep okay? I had a dream about elephants," she said, showing him a picture she'd colored of an elephant family. They were walking somewhere together, and the baby elephant was scared, but the mommy and daddy elephants were protecting her. Andrew sat on the edge of the bed. "That sounds like a good dream. Daddy, are we in trouble?" The question caught him off guard. "What makes you ask that?" "Everyone seems worried. And there are more people with cameras outside than usual." Andrew pulled her into his lap. "We're not in trouble exactly, but some people are saying things about Elena and me that aren't true. And we're going to have to tell our side of the story. Like when Emma said I pushed her at recess, but I didn't, and I had to explain what really happened. Kind of like that." Lily nodded solemnly. "Will you tell them that you're a good daddy?" "I'll tell them the truth, that I love you very much, and that everything I do is because I want to make the world better for you." "That's the same thing," Lily said, returning to her coloring. "Good daddies want to make the world better for their kids." An hour later, Andrew sat in a makeshift television studio in the hotel conference room, facing 3 cameras and a hostile interviewer who'd flown in from New York, specifically to tear apart his story. "Mr. Briggs," the interviewer began, "millions of Americans are asking this morning, are you a hero or are you a fraud?" Andrew looked directly into the camera, thinking about his daughter coloring elephants upstairs, thinking about Kevin Torres risking his life to tell the truth, thinking about Elena preparing to fight for an election that might already be lost. "I'm a father," he said. "Everything else is just details." And for the first time in 3 weeks, Andrew Briggs felt like he knew exactly who he was, and exactly what he was fighting for. The battle for the truth was just beginning, but he was ready for it. The custody hearing was held in a conference room in Manchester, New Hampshire, because Amanda's lawyers had moved fast and the campaign couldn't afford to leave the state. Andrew sat across from his ex-wife at a table that smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams, while their lawyers argued about what constituted a stable environment for a 7-year-old child. Amanda looked polished, professional, like she'd stepped out of a magazine about successful divorced mothers. Her hair was perfect, her suit was expensive, and her expression was carefully composed to suggest both concern and resolve. Andrew wore the same gray sweater he'd worn to the morning show interviews. The one Lily said made him look like Mr. Rogers. It was starting to pill at the elbows. "Your Honor," Amanda's lawyer was saying, "my client isn't asking the court to punish Mr. Briggs for his political activities. She's simply concerned about the welfare of their daughter, who has been removed from her stable home environment and thrust into a highly volatile, potentially dangerous situation." The family court judge, a woman in her 50s, who looked like she'd heard every possible variation of parental conflict, made notes on a legal pad. "Mr. Briggs," she said, "can you help me understand why you believe traveling with a presidential campaign constitutes an appropriate environment for a 7-year-old child?" Andrew's lawyer had prepared him for this question, but the scripted answer felt wrong in his mouth. Instead, he told the truth. "Your Honor, 3 weeks ago my daughter lived in a small apartment in Silver Spring. She went to school, came home, did her homework, watched television, went to bed. It was safe and predictable and small." He glanced at Amanda, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. "Since we've been traveling with Senator Vasquez, Lily has seen 13 states. She's met farmers in Iowa and factory workers in Michigan and college students in New Hampshire. She's learned about wind power from talking to engineers in Kansas and about immigration from talking to families in Arizona. She's getting a better education than any classroom could provide." "But at what cost?" the judge asked. "Ms. Briggs has provided evidence of death threats, security concerns, media harassment." "There are risks," Andrew admitted, "but there are also opportunities. My daughter is learning that ordinary people can make a difference, that when you see something wrong, you step up. That courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of fear. Amanda's lawyer leaned forward. Your Honor, Mr. Briggs is essentially admitting that he's exposing his daughter to danger in order to make a political point. I'm exposing my daughter to the world, Andrew said. I'm showing her that she has a voice, that her opinions matter, that she doesn't have to accept things the way they are if she thinks they could be better. The judge made more notes. Mr. Briggs, are you aware that your daughter has been photographed by media outlets without her consent? That her image has been used in political advertisements? That there are online forums discussing her appearance, her behavior, her relationship with you? Andrew felt sick. No, Your Honor. I wasn't aware of the forums. Are you aware that she's been assigned a security detail because of credible threats against Senator Vasquez's campaign? Yes, Your Honor. And you believe this is an appropriate environment for a child? Andrew looked across the table at Amanda, who was staring at her hands. For a moment, he saw not his ex-wife but the woman he'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, the woman who'd held his hand when Lily was born and cried with joy when their daughter took her first steps. Your Honor, Andrew said quietly, 6 months ago my daughter asked me why bad things happen to good people. I didn't have a good answer. But now I can tell her that bad things happen because good people don't always speak up, and that when they do speak up, when they take risks to help others, sometimes extraordinary things become possible. The judge set down her pen. Mr. Briggs, I can see that you love your daughter very much, but love isn't always enough. Sometimes protecting our children means making choices we don't want to make. Sometimes protecting our children means showing them how to protect others. There was a long silence. Through the window, Andrew could see campaign volunteers setting up for that evening's rally, hanging banners and testing sound equipment. Normal people doing extraordinary work because they believed change was possible. I'm going to take a brief recess, the judge said. I want to speak with the child. 20 minutes later, Lily walked into the conference room holding hands with a court-appointed child advocate. She wore her favorite dress, the blue one with pockets that she'd gotten for her birthday, and carried her stuffed elephant under one arm. She looked so small in the formal setting, but her voice was clear and confident when the judge asked her questions. Lily, do you understand why we're here today? Mommy thinks I should live with her, and Daddy thinks I should stay with him and Elena. How do you feel about that? Lily considered the question seriously. I love Mommy, and I love Daddy, but I think Daddy needs me more right now. Why do you think that? Because he's trying to help Elena become president, and that's a really hard job. He needs someone to remind him to eat breakfast and to push him on swings when he gets sad. Amanda made a small sound, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Lily, the judge said gently, are you happy traveling with your daddy and Elena? Most of the time. Sometimes it's scary when there are lots of people with cameras. And I miss my room and my friends, but I like seeing new places, and I like helping Elena practice her speeches. She lets me tell her if she's being too boring. Do you feel safe? David and Sarah and the other security people keep us safe, and Daddy always makes sure I have my elephant at bedtime. And Elena reads me stories sometimes when Daddy's busy with work. The judge made notes. If you could choose where to live, what would you choose? Lily looked across the table at her mother, then at her father. Can I choose for both of them to stop being sad? What do you mean? Mommy's sad because she thinks Daddy doesn't care about keeping me safe, and Daddy's sad because he thinks Mommy doesn't understand why he wants to help people. But they're both right, kind of. The wisdom of children, delivered in a 7-year-old's matter-of-fact tone. Lily, the judge said, this is a very big decision, and it's not your job to make it. It's the grown-up's job to figure out what's best for you. But it's my life, Lily said simply. Shouldn't I get to help decide? After Lily left the room, the adults sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Amanda spoke. She's right, you know, about both of us. Andrew looked at his ex-wife. Amanda. No, let me finish. Amanda's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. When we got divorced, I was so angry. At you, at myself, at the whole situation. And I've been holding on to that anger for 2 years, using it to justify things. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to withdraw my petition for emergency custody. Andrew felt his chest unclench for the first time in hours. Miss Briggs, the judge said, are you certain about this decision? I'm certain that my daughter is right. Her father isn't being reckless, she's being brave. And maybe that's exactly what she needs to see. Amanda looked at Andrew. But I want conditions. I want regular video calls. I want her to spend 1 weekend a month with me, somewhere safe and private. And if this gets too dangerous, if she gets hurt in any way, if she gets hurt, I'll bring her home myself, Andrew said, and I want to meet Elena, officially. Not as a photo opportunity or a campaign event. As the woman who's helping to raise my daughter. Done. The judge looked between them. Are you both comfortable with this arrangement? Yes, Your Honor, they said in unison, the first time they'd agreed on anything in 2 years. That evening's rally was the largest of the campaign so far. 3,000 people packed into a high school gymnasium, with overflow crowds watching on screens in the cafeteria and auditorium. Elena spoke about healthcare and education and climate change, but mostly she spoke about courage. 3 weeks ago, she said, a man named Andrew Briggs stepped into an alley to help a stranger. He didn't know who I was, didn't know that helping me might change his life and his daughter's life forever. He just saw someone in trouble and acted. From the side of the stage, Andrew watched the crowd. He could see Lily sitting in the front row with Amanda, both of them wearing Vasquez 2024 buttons that someone had given them. His ex-wife was listening intently, taking notes on her phone. That's the America I believe in, Elena continued. Not the America where we turn away from each other's pain, but the America where we step forward, where we take risks for strangers, where we teach our children that doing the right thing matters more than doing the safe thing. The applause was thunderous. Andrew felt his phone buzz a text from Amanda. She's good, really good. I can see why you believe in her. After the rally, as the crowd dispersed and the volunteers began cleaning up, Elena found Andrew and Lily in the quiet corner where they'd been watching. How did it go today? Elena asked. The hearing? Good, Andrew said. Better than good. Amanda withdrew her petition. Really? What changed her mind? Andrew smiled, pulling Lily onto his lap. This one did. She told the judge that grown-ups sometimes forget to listen to kids. Elena knelt down to Lily's level. Is that true? Do we forget to listen? Sometimes, but not you. You always listen when I tell you your speeches are too long. Elena laughed. Speaking of which, what did you think of tonight's speech? It was good, but you could have talked more about playgrounds. Playgrounds? Kids need good playgrounds, with swings that aren't broken and slides that aren't too hot in the summer. Elena looked at Andrew. She's right. We should add playgrounds to the infrastructure plan. I was kidding. I'm not. If we're going to ask people to believe in us, we better start with the things that matter to their kids. Later that night, in a hotel room that was starting to feel like home, Andrew tucked Lily into bed and sat beside her while she settled in with her elephant. Daddy? Yeah, kiddo? I'm glad Mommy came to see us. Me too. And I'm glad she's not mad at you anymore. She was never really mad at me, Lily. She was scared. Sometimes when people are scared, it looks like being mad. Lily nodded solemnly. I get scared sometimes too. About the cameras and the people who yell questions. What do you do when you get scared? I remember that you and Elena are taking care of me. And I remember that we're helping people. Andrew kissed her forehead. That's exactly right. Sweet dreams, kiddo. As Lily drifted off to sleep, Andrew sat by the window looking out at the campaign bus in the parking lot, at the security detail maintaining their quiet watch, at the ordinary miracle of his daughter sleeping peacefully in an extraordinary world. His phone buzzed. Text from Elena. Thank you for staying, for fighting, for believing. He texted back. Thank you for showing us what courage looks like. We're showing each other. came the reply. And for the first time since this all began, Andrew Briggs felt like they might actually win it, just the election, but something more important: the right to tell their children that they'd tried to leave the world better than they'd found it. Outside, America slept, and in the morning there would be new challenges, new battles, new chances to prove that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. But tonight, a single father and his daughter were exactly where they belonged. Election night in Chicago felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting to find out if you could fly or if you were about to fall. Andrew stood in the campaign's war room on the 37th floor of a downtown hotel, watching numbers flicker across dozens of screens while Lily slept on a couch in the corner, exhausted from 8 months of democracy in action. At 10:47 p.m. Central Time, with 73% of precincts reporting, Elena Vasquez was leading by 4 percentage points. "It's not over yet," David said for the 100th time, but his voice carried something it hadn't held in months. Hope. Andrew checked his phone. Text from Amanda. "Watching with my parents. Dad says to tell you he's proud of you." Never thought I'd be typing those words. Another from Sarah. "Mom's crying, good tears. She says she always knew you'd change the world." One from Mrs. Rodriguez, Lily's former teacher. "Lily's art project about the campaign is hanging in our school lobby. The other kids ask about her every day. You're raising a remarkable young woman." Andrew walked to the window, looking down at Grant Park, where thousands of supporters had gathered to watch the results on massive screens. American flags mixed with Vasquez Briggs signs. They'd put his name on the signs, despite his protests creating a sea of red, white, blue, and hope. "Andrew," Elena's voice behind him was quiet, tired, but steady. "Come here for a minute." She was standing near the corner where Lily slept, her own exhaustion evident in the way she held her shoulders. 8 months of 18-hour days, of attacks and investigations, and the constant scrutiny that came with asking Americans to trust you with their future. The conspiracy around Kevin Torres had unraveled slowly, then all at once. An opposition research firm, dark money, a trail of digital breadcrumbs that led to a sitting senator who decided that violence was preferable to losing an election. He was in federal prison now, his political career destroyed, his party scrambling to distance themselves from methods they'd once tacitly encouraged. Kevin Torres was alive and well, studying abroad in Costa Rica under a new identity, his testimony having helped convict the people who'd tried to turn him into a weapon. "Whatever happens tonight," Elena said, "I want you to know something." Andrew waited. "That night in the alley, you didn't just save my life, you saved my faith in why this job matters. You reminded me that politics isn't about winning, it's about serving, about being worthy of people's trust." "Elena, let me finish," she smiled. "If we win tonight, it's because people saw something real in us, something honest. And that started with you stepping into that alley." Andrew looked down at Lily, who was curled up with her elephant. Her future president t-shirt, a gift from the Iowa Volunteers, twisted around her small frame. "If we win tonight," Andrew said, "it's because a 7-year-old taught a bunch of adults how to listen to each other." At 11:23 p.m., Pennsylvania fell into place. At 11:31 p.m., Wisconsin followed. At 11:47 p.m., the major networks began calling the election for Elena Vasquez. The war room erupted in cheers, tears, disbelief, and the particular exhaustion that comes with wanting something so badly for so long that you forget to prepare for actually getting it. Andrew woke Lily gently. "Hey, kiddo. Elena won." She sat up, rubbing her eyes. "She's going to be president?" "She's going to be president." Lily considered this information with the gravity that only children can bring to world-changing news. "Does that mean we can finally get a normal bedtime?" Andrew laughed, the sound mixing relief and joy and the knowledge that nothing would ever be normal again. "We can try, kiddo. We can try." An hour later, they stood on a stage in Grant Park before 50,000 people who'd waited in the November cold to celebrate democracy's promise that change was possible. Elena had insisted that Andrew and Lily join her for the victory speech, despite his protests that this was her moment, not theirs. "My fellow Americans," Elena began, her voice carrying across the crowd and into millions of homes where people were watching history unfold. 8 months ago, I stood in a community center in Iowa and told you about a man named Andrew Briggs. Andrew felt Lily's hand slip into his as the crowd quieted to listen. I told you about how he stepped into an alley to help a stranger, not knowing that stranger was me, not caring what it might cost him. Tonight, that stranger becomes your president. And that man becomes our Secretary of Community Engagement, a new position created to ensure that Washington never forgets what real courage looks like." The crowd roared its approval. Andrew had known about the offer, had spent weeks arguing about whether accepting it was the right thing to do. But seeing Lily's face light up with pride, feeling the energy of 50,000 people who believed that ordinary Americans could make extraordinary change, he knew his answer. "But this victory isn't about Andrew and me," Elena continued. "It's about all of you. It's about the farmers in Iowa who taught us that feeding America is sacred work. It's about the teachers in New Hampshire who reminded us that education is the foundation of democracy. It's about the factory workers in Michigan who showed us that dignity comes from honest labor, fairly compensated." Elena paused, finding Andrew and Lily in the bright lights of the stage. "And it's about a 7-year-old girl named Lily Briggs, who spent the last 8 months traveling around this country, listening to people's stories, asking better questions than most adults, and reminding us that the future belongs to our children, all of our children." The crowd began chanting, "Lily, Lily, Lily." Andrew knelt down to his daughter's level. "They want you to wave, kiddo." Lily stepped forward to the microphone, suddenly shy in front of the massive crowd. But her voice, when it came, was clear and strong. "Hi everybody, thank you for helping Elena become president. She's going to do a really good job, I promise. And can you please make sure all the playgrounds have good swings? The broken ones make kids sad." The laughter that rippled through the crowd was warm, genuine, the kind of sound that happens when people remember why they believe in hope. As they walked off the stage, through the chaos of celebration and media and the controlled pandemonium of a successful campaign, Andrew felt his phone buzz. Text from an unknown number. He almost ignored it. There had been thousands of congratulatory messages from people he'd never met, but something made him check. "Mr. Briggs, this is Kevin Torres, watching from Costa Rica. Thank you for stepping into that alley. Thank you for not letting them win." "Congratulations." Andrew showed the message to Elena as they made their way to the cars that would take them back to the hotel. "He's a good kid," she said. "When this settles down, when it's safe, I want to bring him home. Give him the chance to finish his education, start his life over." "That's very kind." "It's not kind. It's necessary. We don't leave people behind. That's what this is all about." 3 hours later, Andrew sat in his hotel room, watching Lily sleep in the bed next to his. The television was still on, showing election coverage, but he'd turned the volume down. Through the window, Chicago sparkled in the pre-dawn darkness, a city full of people who'd gone to sleep in one America and would wake up in another. His phone rang. "Amanda." "I saw the speech," she said. "Secretary of Community Engagement? It's a real job, real responsibilities. And Lily gets to go to regular school, have a normal routine." "Andrew." Amanda's voice was soft. "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of both of you. You did something extraordinary. You changed the country. Don't downplay it." A pause. "Are you happy?" Andrew looked at his daughter, sleeping peacefully after a day that had ended with 50,000 people chanting her name. In the morning, they'd start the complex work of transition, of turning campaign promises into governing reality, of proving that the hope they'd inspired could survive contact with Washington's entrenched cynicism. "I'm terrified," Andrew said honestly, "and exhausted, and worried about 1,000 things I can't control." "But are you happy?" Andrew thought about the question. Happiness seemed too small a word for what he felt, too simple for the complex mix of gratitude and responsibility and love that had carried him from that rainy alley to this moment. "I'm home," he said finally. "For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Then I'm happy too." After Amanda hung up, Andrew turned off the television and sat in the quiet darkness, listening to the sound of his daughter breathing, the distant celebration in the streets below, the whisper of possibility that comes with new beginnings. In a few hours, the real work would begin. There would be appointments to make, policies to craft, the daily grind of turning idealism into legislation. There would be compromises and setbacks and the thousand small defeats that democracy inflicts on even its most passionate believers. But there would also be quiet moments when he could tell Lily that once upon a time, when the country needed heroes, ordinary people had stepped forward. When democracy was threatened, citizens had defended it. When children needed champions, adults had found the courage to fight for them. Andrew Briggs closed his eyes and dreamed of swing sets and art projects, and a 7-year-old girl who'd taught a nation how to listen to each other. Outside, America slept, and in the morning there would be work to do. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, the work felt like hope. 2 years later, on a warm afternoon in May, Secretary of Community Engagement Andrew Briggs stood in the Rose Garden, watching his daughter plant tomatoes in the White House vegetable garden, while President Elena Vasquez answered questions from a group of elementary school students on a field trip from Alexandria. "Ms. President," one boy asked, "do you ever get scared?" "Every day," Elena answered honestly. "But my friend Andrew taught me that being scared doesn't mean you don't act. It means you act carefully, with love, with the people you care about by your side." Lily looked up from her tomato plants, dirt smudged on her cheek, and waved at her father. 9 years old now, she attended the local public school, rode her bike to soccer practice, and occasionally gave tours of the West Wing to other children whose parents worked in the administration. She was, in other words, gloriously, completely normal. Andrew waved back, then checked his watch. In an hour, he had a meeting with the Secretary of Education about playground safety standards. Tomorrow, he was traveling to Detroit to tour a community center that was implementing the administration's new youth engagement initiatives. Next week, Lily had a school science fair where she'd be presenting her project on renewable energy inspired, she'd told him, by the solar panels they'd seen on farms in Iowa during the campaign. The work continued. The hope endured. And sometimes, late at night when the White House was quiet and his daughter was asleep down the hall, Andrew would remember a rainy evening in Washington when a stranger needed help and he'd simply done what felt right. It had been, he thought, the easiest decision he'd ever made, and the most important.